Okay, next we're going to show you the trim tools. Now the trim tools can be found on the Edit menu under Trim. You'll see them here. You also find them on the All-in-One toolbar just underneath the rubber stamp tool. The first one here is the Trim Corner tool. Now if I click and hold that down, you'll see the other tools are hidden underneath there. Okay, so the Trim Corner tool, what this is going to do, when I click on these two lines, it's going to delete the excess and create a single corner point. So I'll click here, I'll click on the side that I want to keep here, and it deletes off the excess. Now they don't have to be intersecting, so if I have a single polyline that wraps all the way around here, I can trim these so that it is also a corner point. So again, I'll click here and click here, and it extends that line and gives me a single point on the corner. Okay, the next trim tool is the Trim Round. Now Trim Round, we can go up here to the Edit bar and we can set the radius to round a corner by. So I'm going to set the radius to 3 foot. Okay, and I'll come in and I'll click here and I'll click here, and it gives me a 3 foot rounded radius. The next trim tool is the Trim Bevel tool. Now Trim Bevel is going to give us a chamfered beveled edge. Up in the Edit bar you'll see that the bevel length is currently set at 6 foot. I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. Click on this point and then come down to this line and click here, and it bevels it with a 6 by 6 bevel. Now if I go up here to the Edit bar and I uncheck the box here, this is where I can change the bevel height and width. So if I want it to be a 3 foot by 4 foot bevel, I'll come down here, I'll click and click, and now it's 3 foot by 4 foot rather than 6 by 6. Okay, so the next one is the Trim Edge tool. Now the Trim Edge, I have to select a baseline first. The baseline is going to be this vertical line, and I'm going to select the side of this horizontal line that I want to trim to it. So I want to trim this side, so I'll click here, and it trims off the excess just to the right of that baseline. Okay, if I want to trim this one, I don't have to necessarily have one that's intersecting, so I'll select this baseline and then I'll click here to extend the second line to the baseline. Okay, the next trim tool is the Trim Intersection. Basically what we're going to do is it's going to trim and keep the common area between these two rectangles. So I select the first rectangle and then the second, and then it keeps only the common area between those two rectangles. The next one is the Trim Union. I'll select the first rectangle and then the second rectangle, and it basically merges or joins the two rectangles into one polygon shape. Alright, the next trim tool is the Trim Difference. Now Trim Difference is going to basically remove a portion of one rectangle from the other rectangle. So the portion that I want to remove is this rectangle here, and the one that I want to keep is going to be this rectangle here. So it's going to deduct the area from this. So I'll click on the second rectangle, and it has removed that common area plus the remainder of the first rectangle. Okay, the next trim tool is the Trim Channel tool. Now the Trim Channel is one of my favorite tools on the trim menu. It's very versatile and it can be very handy. What this is going to allow us to do is to create a channel. So I'll click and then I'm going to drag a channel like so. Okay, so it's created this channel. Now anything that I click on that falls within this channel will now be deleted. Okay, so it works on polygons, circles, and polylines like that. Okay, I'm done at that point, so I right click. Okay, now these are all independent pieces, so it's fractured these into different pieces, which can be very handy to us. Let's go ahead and show you an example of what we can do with the Trim Channel tool. Okay, so I have a drawing here and I want to only do the front yard. I really don't need anything from the backyard here. Now if I go in and I select the property line or the foundation wall and delete them, it's going to delete portions of that the wall or the property line that I'll want to keep. So I need to basically crop or trim portions of this. So I'm going to use the trim channel tool. Okay, I'll click here and I'll create a channel. Okay, now anything that I click on within that channel will become deleted. Okay, alright, now when I select that property line, I can delete it like that. I can select the foundation wall, I can delete it like that, and then the rest of this I can just go in and select it pretty easily like so, and just delete those. Now once I have everything deleted, I'm going to go ahead and click Auto Scale Drawing. It's going to make it larger on my page. Okay, so the Trim Channel tool basically removes the excess stuff that I really don't want in the drawing. Alright, let's go ahead and move back to our drawing. Okay, the next one is the Trim Join tool. Now before I select the Trim Join tool, I want you to notice I'm going to go in here, and the lines that I have here, these are all just lined segments. They're not a polyline like this one here is a polyline where it's point A to point B to point C to D and so on. Okay, where these are just point A to point B, so you have just a straight line that just happen to have common endpoints. Okay, now the Trim Join tool allows us to join these lines together into a single polyline. So I'll go to my Trim menu and I'll select Trim Join. I'll click on the first line, I'll click on the second line, and that joins those two together. Now I'll click on the second line and then the third line, and it joins those two together. I'll click on the third line and the fourth line, and now they're joined together. Okay, so now if I double click, you'll see that I have instead of 8 vertice points, I have 5 vertice points, and it's all one continuous polyline rather than 4 independent line segments. Now it's important that they have common endpoints. If I was to try to join these two, I could not join these two because they have a gap here. Okay, so for this one, if I wanted them to join, I would want to snap to an endpoint. So I'm going to turn my endpoint snap on by hitting the letter E on the keyboard, and then I snap to that line. So now there's still 2 independent lines with a common endpoint. So I'm going to use my Trim Join tool to trim them, and now they're one continuous polyline. Okay, the next trim tool is the Trim Alcove tool. With the Trim Alcove, we can create an alcove on a poly shape like this one. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to click on the line that I want to create the alcove. Okay, the next thing I need to do, let's go ahead and turn the snaps off, is I want to create the point where I want the alcove to start. I'll click here. Okay, and then when I do that, I can set the width of the alcove. I'll click. Now I can set the height, and I can go on the inside or the outside of that shape, and I'll click, and there it's created an alcove. Okay. Also with the alcove tool, we can go up to the edit bar and we can change the angle of the side walls here. So I'm going to change it to a 45-degree angle, and I'll create an alcove here. I'll click on this line to select it. I'll click on the point where I want to create the alcove. Okay, I change, or I set the width of the alcove, and I pull that up to set the height or the depth, and I click, and that creates an alcove with 45-degree sidewalls. Okay, and that is our trim tools.